Start again. Welcome, everyone. It's fantastic to see so many people here. My name's Tim Wheeler. I'm Director of Research and Innovation at the National Environment Research Council. My directorate oversees essentially all the funding that NERC allocates to the research, innovation, training capital community across the UK. I was giving a talk on Friday to engineers for Australia, and unlike you, when I mentioned the National Environment Research Council, of course, they were entirely blank. I then said, have you heard of Boaty McBoatface? And of course they all started sniggering and, oh yeah, we know that, we know that. I think for this audience you are entirely familiar with what NERC does, and I'm going to skip the introductory and get down really to why we're here today and tomorrow. I mean, in a sense, what we're trying to do in NERC through this initiative is something different. Over the years, the NERC portfolio by any means has been really, really impressive. Some of that is responsive, deliberately so, and makes the supporting of the best ideas from the community a large part of the NERC portfolio through discovery, science, grants, and elsewhere. In other parts of the portfolio, we've been trying to be more directed, and our role there, as I see it in NERC, is really to catalyse you in the external community to answer some of the biggest questions in environmental science. Our role is not to say exactly where those advances can be made and the technical basis that those decisions need to be made on, but it is really to set the broad envelope of saying this is what NERC wishes to achieve and to open up the opportunity for you and others to do the hard work, make those achievements. And it's very much in that second vein that I'm here today because we've identified a number of, a small number, I think it's fair to say, a small number of priority areas where we'd like to direct some of NERC's support over the next 5 to 10, perhaps even 20 years. I'm going to be retired at that point, but I will check in to see how things are going. To actually set some directions around some high priority areas that the environmental science community has an enormous opportunity to bid in, but actually is broader than environmental science. The bit of context that's important here that you will all know is, of course, NERC ceased to be a separate legal entity in April of this year. We're now part of UK Research and Innovation. From my perspective, overseeing NERC's research and innovation funding, I want to see UKRI being proud of one or two big priority areas that the environmental science community can respond to in that wider UK research and innovation landscape. And no pressure, this is going to be one. So that's why we're here. You would have seen from the short abstract that I sent in that in a sense I think we've kind of defined the problem statement. We want to, together with stakeholders and collaborators, we want to define an area that we're terming landscape decisions that considers the evidence base and the scientific understanding behind decisions that are made in the landscape, decisions of all sort, and decisions that are made by a broad range of potential stakeholders, whether they be from a policy community, a practitioner community, or otherwise. And I guess in terms of difficult questions, this is probably about as difficult as it comes, which is why we deliberately want to provide a focus on it. In a single sentence, we've defined this as a question of how can land be managed to realise benefits for health and well-being, both now and in the future. But the subtleties underneath that are really important. For today's and tomorrow's discussion, and within this broad theme of work, we're talking about land, but we're also talking about coastal decisions. We're talking about decisions in the rural areas, we're talking about decisions in urban areas, and the interface between the two. And I think whilst realising benefits for humans, we also need to think about the impacts on the environment that provides a range of services for humans as we go forward. So it's easy to, I guess, to summarise a problem in a single sentence, but the difficulty is the complexity that lies underneath it. And for me, that's the academic challenge. This is a difficult question. It has elements that vary across spatial and temporal scales. It has a whole broad range of stakeholders who have different interests in the kind of services, the kind of benefits that landscapes provide for us. So that is our challenge in a sense. I have this theory, I think it's unfounded, but I'll share it with you, which is that research councils should be tackling these really difficult questions, but, and it's criticism of ourselves, quite often our funding mechanisms tend to shy away from some of the really difficult research questions. And they do that by being relatively short-term by their nature, perhaps 3 to 5 years. And they do that by perhaps not bringing that coherence of effort between those working in different parts of the environmental science portfolio. So that is what I want to do through this particular initiative and 2 or 3 others that we're going to be kicking off over the coming months. And of course, we're not working alone. I'm absolutely delighted that Ian Williams from DEFRA has very much been a part of this process from the beginning. Ian Boyd as well in those very early discussions. This is, I guess, an initiative where NERC has one particular element to contribute, but it is only one amongst many, and it's really important to me and our teams that we're working closely with Ian and his as we've been developing this idea. I'm sure through conversations the next couple of days you will see your own perspective into this, so we welcome this as almost a broad coalition of effort towards addressing landscape decisions, not one that should just be seen as NERC owned and led. So what have we done so far? Well, we enlisted Georgina Mace, Ian Bateman, Peter Cox earlier in this process to start trying to think about a narrative that might sit on top of defining research challenges in landscape decisions. Others in the audience were there. Rosie Hales was there. Simon Curley, my colleague here, was there. Why is this useful? I think this is useful because, as I said earlier, we want to build a coherent program of activities, of which this particular one is just one important element. We want to be looking for research programs that spin out underneath this umbrella, perhaps innovation programs and definitely policy-facing programs that come under this umbrella of landscape decisions. From my perspective, there may be investments NERC needs to make in capital, in new sensors, in new networks, in new data collection activities. And there will certainly be, I think, a need for new training investments, whether those are at PhD fellowship or other levels. So we're trying to bring a coherence, and what we asked Georgina and Ian to do, perhaps unfairly because it's a difficult question, was to provide with a small group a narrative across this area of landscape decisions. And we're going to be evolving that narrative. It is by no means complete. We put everyone in a room for half a day in the MRC, and we got a long way with trying to draft a narrative, but also we flushed out why it was quite difficult to do. And I only actually allowed them 1 page and 1 diagram, so that's slightly unfair in such a complex area. Anyway, moving on from that. So we have made a start. We have started to drill down into some of the complexities under this question of how we manage land to realise benefits for human health and well-being. And this workshop, I think, will add something to that. I think it's important to think about what success looks like, because embarking on this, what I hope would be a long-term venture, I think we need to have a clear line of sight as to where we want to get to. And I think there's 3 elements to this. Number 1, I know this is a difficult question, so I don't really need 5 years worth of NERC activities to tell me how difficult it is. I can appreciate that already. We need instead to be more solution focused, not jumping to solutions, but more forward looking in terms of providing advice, providing evidence that helps us to be better informed in making these very difficult decisions. There will be no optimal solution. So we don't jump to an optimal solution for the UK in a decision-making framework. And equally, there will be no single model, whether that's numerical or whether that's narrative-based model, that answers all the questions that we need to make within landscapes. But at the same time, in this particular program, we want to be more solution-focused, looking forwards. How can we improve the evidence-based decision-making within these complex landscapes across these different temporal and spatial scales? So better evidence is an important metric, and this is where our link with DEFRA is important, because on the policy side, that is our link into the UK national decision-making policy across the landscape. Stakeholders, number 2, stakeholders are incredibly important. This is, as I've said already, not deliberately solely a NERC-focused activity. And we need to be working within a broad coalition of those who have interests in the UK landscape in building this programme and in thinking about how the outputs of this programme can then realise impact and changes in our decision-making ability. And as I touched on already, we're not at this early stage putting a firm boundary of what we mean about landscapes. We have set this up as a UK-focused programme, and I'll say something about that in a moment, but we are deliberately being vague, or should we say open, is probably a more positive way of putting that, in how we define some of the activities under this particular theme. And that's where we're open to the ideas of everyone in this room and in the subsequent events that we'll be running. Let me return to that UK versus international. When we were first thinking about this as a big theme for NERC, our focus was on UK decisions on UK landscapes. And in part that was because some of the future funding opportunities that we saw had a UK focus. But I guess as many as you immediately will realise, the sort of underpinning processes, the underpinning decision-making process on UK landscapes could equally be applied wherever you are in the world. The context will be different, the data will be different, the kind of questions may well be different, and certainly the stakeholders will be different. But as we drill down to some of these underpinning processes that we can improve evidence-based decision-making around landscapes, then there are elements that will transfer to other environments. And just mentioning this, on a couple of international trips this year to funders in other countries, we've had enormous interest, particularly from the Canadians, the National Resources side of the Canadian government in this question. So we're looking to align activities with the Canadian government. And then last week in Australia, enormous interest across 2 or 3 different departments that each have an element of this question. So I think we're sort of garnering some international support, and over the next few months we'll think about how we bring that into what at the moment is deliberately set up as a UK-focused activity. So a couple of minutes left. I'm going to be here for all of the sessions today, so I very much look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on this. This is a genuinely long-term and genuinely open process from my perspective, so it'll be interesting to see where discussions go. I think probably my only requirement is perhaps to ask everyone to try something different throughout the next couple of days. I'm aware, and you'll be aware, of the various techniques that can be brought to this particular question, but I think now is the phase of a longer term activity where we should be trying to do something different and thinking beyond our normal disciplinary boundaries. So, Jane, thank you very much. That was all I wanted to say. I look forward to listening to the presentations and engaging in the discussions throughout the day, and thanks again very much for coming. So, Peter's very quick to cut to the chase there. Let me just back up. I don't see this as a single program. So we have a single program that we're running with the Isaac Newton Institute that we envisage to start today and to roll out into next year. What I see us doing in NERC actually is bringing a variety of funding sources to this priority and to start issuing calls, running programs over time. There's nothing that we can definitely announce during the course of this workshop, but very soon after that we will start making announcements around this theme. So I think we're talking about 2 things. We're talking about alignment of ongoing activities, and NERC in its portfolio already has programs that fall within this scheme, such as the ASSIST program. But we're talking about realizing new and different activities where NERC will bring funding to enable those to happen, that will come out of meetings such as this within the landscape decisions priority.
After the Newton program next year, that's what I'm really...
we hope to make announcements before then. We're in a slightly awkward situation in terms of public announcements at the moment, but we hope to be able to say something before then.
I throw one in. I'm a mathematician, Mathematics can be very direct. Numbers tell the story or a story. So being informed does not necessarily mean better decision making. So basically the question is, how do you make mathematics or being quantitative more socially acceptable? Because I mean, I've personally experienced and lots of people that that's a very important next step.
Yep. So absolutely agree with that view. I think from the NERC perspective, a point I didn't make is that we are working also with the ESRC and the AHRC within the Research Council context to try to bring that more social element to this question. We don't see this purely as a numerical problem, but for the purpose of the next 2 days, we see the numerical element being one part of this wider question. So.
Perhaps just one final question at the back there.
A quick question, Tim. Obviously, as you said, there's a difficult problem. Is NERC planning on funding some high-risk programs where where you are assuming most things will fail, but are okay with that? I mean, there is this perception that NERC is fairly risk-averse. Will there be some element of, shall we say, high-risk funding?
Yeah. So I'm not going to make any promises on funding, but I'm absolutely convinced that we need to take risks. And the point that I ended with in those list of comments really is to try to do something different. If we wanted to continue as we are at the moment, I think we've got enough mechanisms to do that. The idea of bringing this together as a coherent program around a particular priority is enabled to take more risks. Not with every single thing that's funded, that wouldn't be sensible, but to think differently. And so, this comes back to our catalyzing role. In NERC, we're the catalyst of activities, and I think, in a sense, we're giving permission here to be more risky for some of the activities that we see as part of landscape decisions.
Thank you, Tim. So I would just suggest, so that we can try and keep to time as much as possible, although I do acknowledge that David and I started this off slightly late running. If we let Tim go, if anyone else has any other questions, please